Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an extraordinary episode of Invincible Innovation. I'm your host, Adima Zolkario, product design and AI expert. And in this episode, I have the privilege of speaking to a scientist and expert who will share his insight and expertise on the latest trends and developments in the field. Join us as we explore the fascinating applications of AI in various contexts and uncover how it is shaping the future of technology. So sit back, relax, and get ready to embark on a journey in the exciting world of AI. And my guest is Tomer. Hi,
Hi,
Tomer. How are you?
Eddie. I'm good. How are you?
Dr. Tomer Simon is the chief scientist at Microsoft Israel R&D Center. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're so invited to join the discussion and ask questions. And now we can start. So, because you were an Israeli from the Israeli Center, I have to ask about the Israeli contribution to Microsoft's recent AI development and how will it impact the AI field?
The Microsoft Israel R&D Center is in Israel for more than 30 years. Around 1991, it was actually the second multinational company opening in Israel after Intel.
Wow.
Microsoft sees Israel as a strategic country and a strategic partnership for the entire development of the Microsoft products. Specifically on AI, we started again many years ago around the AI, but if we jump forward to the generative AI age, so three of the first global announcements of Microsoft of integrating GPT technology into the Microsoft core products came out of Israel, of our Microsoft
Really?
R&D center. Yes, yeah.
Wow. And why did they decide for Israel? Why didn't they start with the US? I guess branch would make sense,
It's
no?
a global company, and we have here more than 40 different product groups, and it's according the product. It's not according the location, and it happened to have that here we had amazing engineers and data scientists who jumped onto this amazing new wave of innovation and rapidly developed and innovated around these three products.
Wow, I'm proud again to be an Israeli here. What are the differences before we start to dive into generative AI and AI? So could you explain the differences between regular AI and generative AI and how are they changing the world?
So first, AI is a very old technology. It's already the first article speaking about it. It's from Alan Turing. He's one of the forefathers of AI when he asked, "Can machines think?" But in 1956, the term artificial intelligence was coined. So you can understand it's a very long journey of more than 7 decades of this technology. And really the bottom line, and to put it simply, is how do we enable computers to have human-like capabilities of thinking? So how do we take the human intelligence and we put it into the artificial part, which is the computer? And if we look at these 71 years that we had amazing breakthroughs in AI, we can speak also soon about the significance of Microsoft to this field, but we had AI that analyzes object sentiment or the natural language processing or natural language understanding, object recognition with vision, facial recognition, and all of these technologies. But as you understand, it was to analyze reality, okay? To have predictions maybe on reality. But now we have generative AI. It started already in 2021, but it really exploded, as we can say, like a Cambrian explosion at the end of November 2022 when ChatGPT was released. And now we have an AI that generates reality or generates artifacts into reality versus analyzing reality. And this is I think the main difference. And the
Yeah.
second one is that it was called artificial narrow intelligence. We had amazing AI capabilities for example, speech to text or sentiment analysis in object recognition. These models did this very well. It is even called today BTH, better than human. So a few years ago, we already reached human parity on these capabilities, but it's artificial narrow intelligence. So it's doing one thing very well, and it cannot do anything else. Now, if you're going to ChatGPT or using Azure OpenAI, you can see that the generative AI, you can give it anything and everything, and it can help you on various degrees, but it's not limited to one task. And it's not artificial general intelligence, but it is a general capability inside AI that it can do many, many things. And this is the
Yeah.
second part of the differences.
So, if I understand correctly, you would say that a general, regular AI understands the world and could predict, for example, if a car is moving, where will it be in a second? So, it could predict afterwards what would happen. And now, more than that, in generative AI, it could reproduce something. It should create someone who's speaking, who is like writing, someone who's like creating an image. It is more creative in that sense, and in the future it was more perceptive.
Yes, and this is part of the perception versus also cognition. And so it's two different things or aspects of one, but two differentiated aspects of AI. And again, also prediction is to classify. So, for example, if you're doing again an AI for the safari, for a zoo, and you need to classify or to identify animals, so you train it to identify giraffes, but it cannot see all the giraffes in the world. Now you're on the safari in Africa, and you take a picture, and it should tell you whether it is a giraffe or not. So again, this is the classification or prediction, but this is a very different aspect of how to generate now an image of a giraffe in DALI, for example.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned another thing, that it's very narrow and now it's wider. It could be
Yes.
more than one model. It could create lots of things in one application or one AI solution.
So wide AI is better for the name, and yes, we had artificial narrow intelligence. So you had your AI algorithm inside your car navigation, and it cannot schedule a meeting in your calendar, or it cannot classify cats. And now we have a model, one model, these large language models as they are called, like ChatGPT or GPT-4, that you can give it any task as creative or as complex as you want it, and it will be able to tackle it onto up to certain levels. But you have mechanisms, it's called in context learning, that you can improve the answer and that it will really help you on a wide array of tasks.
Yeah. So another thing that we could say, that in the past, an AI model needed data and the model and calculations were done. Right now we have more data coming into this model because it's a very large model, and it could calculate further. So it's more complex model, and it's creating more answers when he's asked to.
So yes, and this is a third aspect of the difference. I didn't want to go into, but it's like more technical. But it's called GoFi, good old-fashioned AI, the previous AI. So you had models that, as long as you provided more and more data, the model improved and changed. It was called model. It might have been also model drift to really change, but the models were opened or were open to continuously change as you bring more and more data. It was called in inference. You had the training and the inference, and now these models are closed. The generative AI are closed for learning. If you're using ChatGPT, you know it states very clearly that it doesn't know anything after September 2021. So this is also a major difference, that they are called pre-trained. So they were trained on internet scale data. So really huge language models, large language models, but up to a certain point. And it has many, many reasons, but this is, let's call it, the third aspect of difference between the GoFi.
But I have a question about what you just said. If I'm training, if a person wants to develop an application for insurance, for example, based on the capabilities of ChatGPT 4, the inputs coming from their customers, the insurance clients, is not integrated into the model, or it stays only in the side of the third-party application?
So it depends how deep do you want to go. So there are two really, if we're looking at the overarching architecture, if companies want to do something with GPT-like technologies, so also on the Azure OpenAI, they have the capability, it's called fine-tuning. So you can take, for example, GPT-3, GPT 3.5, also soon GPT-4, and you can bring your own data, okay? and do a custom model. So you'll have your own Adi Mazor GPT, okay, that is trained on your expertise, on your knowledge, and you can do with it whatever you want. But you can add to a model capabilities or knowledge. So you choose if it's for insurance, whether you want it to know how an insurance agent thinks or the knowledge of insurance, and then you can use it. The second one is most organizations and most of the world is not based on large language models. They are based on these relational databases or the legacy systems or regular systems with their own databases or data lakes. And we want to integrate now generative AI capability into these systems and not develop an entire new system. So this is again just for the technicality. It's called RAG, RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. How can I use my own database to retrieve information from it, augment it into the prompt, and generate a new response using, for example, GPT-4 like capabilities? And this is, I think, this is the most used, the most common used technique today, and it's really for rapid development and rapid innovation and rapid iterations for prototyping.
Yeah, I guess there are many companies in the world, they have lots of data about their transactions and about what their clients need, and they want to utilize and optimize what they're doing with the power of these engines. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you have like lots of, since you started, when was I think half a year ago, OpenAI started with Microsoft, or eight months?
So the partnership started in 2019. Okay, so this is when it started, and part of the work around Bing was the main engine. It started already in late 2022, and then we had the announcement of the OpenAI announced ChatGPT at the end of November, and then everything
Yes.
happened.
So I counted only from November. So it's something like that. So do you get lots of requests from big organizations? And I guess their data is not easy to utilize because it's not as clean and clear as they wanted it to be?
So yes, and in the last 5-6 months, it's from across the world, and also it's not only for startups. It's governments are meeting and talking and deploying huge systems within 3 months, and this is part of
Wow.
the thing that changed. And as I'm saying, I'll say it again: any company that started a data or an AI program before December 2022, stop, reassess, reevaluate, and even restart, because you can do it now completely differently, much faster and cheaper, and it will bring enhanced capabilities that were not available. And this is the scope. And usually when we think of governments, just until they write the tender and publish the tender, it's going to be 3-4 years, and then develop so we'll meet in 5-6 years, and we'll see. And they understand that it's irrelevant today, this scope of time. And again, I've been working with a number of governments from around the world, and some of them have deployed huge systems within a quarter. And this is the main difference here, because AI was democratized, and this is the other part of generative AI, that it's completely democratized. It means that there is no knowledge barrier or technology barrier or any literacy barrier that you have. It's just open a browser and you can start developing code. You can even develop AI models, just articulate and use your language. And it's as Andrei Karpathy, now he's one of the co-founders of OpenAI, but he led also Tesla's AI. He said at the beginning of January that English is the programming language of the future. And we see it now. You can use also Hebrew, but just use your language. And this is the prompts, how you interact with these models. And you can create or generate really anything and everything. And this is part of the thing. And Microsoft calls it also AI at scale. So now you can create AI models, a number of them a day, or maybe dozens a week. But also, also the data scientists, or the data science was partly democratized, that now every software developer can also start developing models or AI models, or implement AI models into these capabilities. And this is the second dimension of the scale, that it really is available to anyone.
Yeah, I didn't know it so fast. It's really surprising, especially in governmental organizations, that everything is usually very slow. So
The
surprising.
pace, the pace has changed completely.
Wow. So
Yeah.
if we're talking about the future of AI and how it will it impact our daily lives in long term, and maybe we could talk about the workforce changing. What do you think?
So first, let's take one of the first laws of technology that we overestimate in the short period and underestimate uh, in the long period. And now we are in the underestimation of the long period of AI, because really a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, even 5 years ago, no one would have imagined or predicted that generative AI will explode as it did at the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023. So again, it's almost impossible to predict a few years into the future what will happen. I'll just say that it's still in development. It's still accelerating. We're going to see amazing improvements, changes, and capabilities coming. But now we're going to see, of course, how all sectors of society, of industries are going to use and implement it, and also in companies also, how the HR might use generative AI. It's not only the industry, the agriculture, but also different sectors or even different departments within companies can now leverage it to improve their daily lives or their operations, and create and provide very differentiated services to their employees or to their customers. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to be everywhere.
And do you see like we're going to go back to the workforce? I didn't forget that. I want to ask you about risks. We said it's really fast. We said it's really easy to implement. It's going to be wide in any kind of sector. So do you see any risk in these technologies?
So, of course, there are the risk, as people also mentioned from the beginning of the year. We know that one of the, let's call it a feature of this technology is the hallucinations, that it can write very confidently things that are wrong. But this is something that we should know. And this is, again, I'm going back to the literacy, know with which tool you're using for the specific tasks. Because, for example, if you're going to ChatGPT, this is like an experimentation and development and research playground. It was not intended for any production use, for any legal, medical, or any other regulated use. So if someone is using it and blaming it should know already at August that this is part of the technology, okay? Specifically if you're using ChatGPT. Having said that, there are many mechanisms that have been developed also within Microsoft. We are developing many mechanisms, and it started already in 2016. It's called responsible AI, and part of it is hallucination, but this is a new behavior of these models. But we have bias, transparency, security, safety, accountability. How do we integrate it and provide it for safe use for the customers? And this is also the difference. For example, if you if you're using ChatGPT under the OpenAI platform, or you're using ChatGPT inside Bing, you will see a completely different behavior. That there we implemented many safety and accountability mechanisms to make sure that to minimize really the possibility of first hallucinations and then all the other harms that I mentioned. And maybe if you use it, you saw that there are three there is a toggle button with three states, from creative to precise. So if you're using the precise, so if you need to write an academic paper, or you need medical advice or legal advice, go to the precise. It will not hallucinate. And it means that we have already mechanisms to minimize or even to stop hallucinations, and then do the trade-offs and understand. But again, the buzzword of hallucination is bothering many companies and people, and know there are ways to handle it also for your internal developments or implementations.
Yeah. So other than hallucinations, which are actually mistakes of the model, saying something that he's really sure of, but actually has no ground, what are the other risks that we're talking about?
So first, I want to go back to hallucination because part of the artificial intelligence to act or behave as a human, many people also say
Lie.
stuff very confidently without any grounding.
Yeah, we
And
have politicians everywhere. So, yeah,
so
we have
this
that.
is part maybe just uh, is this us? But this is a conversation. But we don't again we don't expect it, and we don't want to provide a system, especially if, again for an enterprise grade use or for governmental use or for regulated industries. We cannot provide an hallucinating uh, um, technology. The second issue is that you saw people are claiming around um, IP issues or what is the future of various the creative arts. By the way, so people are scared, but I think again it's part of the change. I think it's again my personal view, and I think it's augmenting the creative crafts or artists and musicians. We can see amazing stuff that musicians and artists are using generative AI to augment their work, to jumpstart many albums or even shows. So this is a balance. How do you look and how do you view these technologies? But again, one of the things that I really recommend, start using it. Don't only read about it. Don't just hear the rumors about this scary stuff. Use it and understand what it can do for you, whether on your personal life or the professional life, or even if you want for your hobbies. So
Yeah.
through experimentation, this is the only way to really understand.
Yeah. So we mentioned creative people, and we know that there is a strike in Los Angeles, right? All the writers and actors, they're saying we're not sure it's going to enhance our capabilities because the big studios could take our audio, the way that we speak, and how we look, and the way that we act, and the way that we write, and everything, and just do it artificially based on all our talent in the past. So I guess that what they're worried about is not the fact that it will take them a week to write a script instead of 2 or 3 years. They're worried that it could be done automatically without maybe 90% of the workforce there.
So I think I'll try to offer another perspective for example, for movie actors. One of their
Right.
possibilities now is to create their avatar and hire or rent their avatar in many multiple movies in parallel, that they cannot go everywhere, but they can make now many maybe money from their expertise, from their character, from their brand. And we see already famous actors that are using it to even from Israel, and they can now be in Japan or from wherever. And so this is part of the creative part that now it's limitless also for them. And this is why you see some actors who really embraced and experimented and played with this, understood the capabilities, and they really understood and leveraged the potential for themselves. Now, let's say, not to be everywhere, but really to multiply even their incomes through this platform. So again, it's a perspective. Um, uh, we can see it from the first industrial revolution. Humanity always objects new technology. We are always fightful. If we even go to 2007, before they started the Large Hadron Collider, so the particle accelerator in Switzerland, CERN, people were sure that a black hole will emerge and will suck up all of the planet. So we are always afraid. We were afraid of telephones, of trains, of electricity, of course. But this is part of, I think, of a transformative change, and this is part of, I think, also how society and even governments can play a role to help alleviate the tensions, the fears, and help their populations adopt and be an active member and an active participator in this technology and lead to a change.
Yeah, it's two things come to my mind. First is the fact that we know what there is right now, so we know what's going to change. So some of the work and roles would be changed. We don't know what are the future roles or the new roles or professions that would come from it. So that's a real reason for fear. And second thing, when you talked about the actors, there is a movie. I think it's called The Parliament from Ali Shamai. Do you know this movie?
No, no.
It's an animation movie
Okay.
about an actress, and she's taken not by AI by a big studio, and they take pictures of her and they record her, and they want to pay her for using this character in other movies
Okay.
because she's older right now, and they want to use her talent for as a young woman for later. So
By the
it's
way, there,
exactly.
there are already small studios who create avatars that promote and sell brands in the tens of millions of dollars a year, and millions are following these AI generated characters. So you can see how the thing changed. I want to just open parenthesis on in parallel a few years ago with a colleague from the academia, not related to my Microsoft day job. I, I worked with a colleague, Dr. Gadi Nissim, on the role or the changing role of labor unions in the age of AI. And part of our recommendation was, again, as you mentioned, the AI actors now, is that they need to also build a longer view for their future roles or for the technologies that are shaping the world, and not only, meet them at the intersection. And this is
Yeah.
change from a tactical view to a strategic view, and be part of the change. And then they can also impact and make a difference on the long term, and not only, on this clash on a strike. So
Yeah.
this is also part of the thing they need to adopt. Also, it's recommended that they adopt part of the a more holistic and long term view.
Yeah, I understand the way that they're trying to block this technology because they really don't know what's going to happen. I could tell you just that I've been trying all these technologies, and one of the things I took my son, he's 13 years old, and he's a really good painter and loves art and everything, and we played with Midjourney, and he really loved it for a few hours, and then he said, It's not fun. I want to create it myself. All the creativity is in the side of the machine." So I totally understand people that are frustrated or angry or
So,
fearful
but
about it.
again, there is a famous example when the printing press was invented and starting to distribute the machines across Europe. The Writing Guild in France objected, managed to stop the introduction of the printing press for 20 years in France. They wanted to keep their livelihood through writing. So again, this is part of the thing.
Mhm.
I don't know any company or any economy or country that will say, let's wait or let's stop it for 20 years.
Yeah. So if we're talking about the workforce, we talked about creative people because generative AI is creative, but actually I guess that AI would go to any, like it could go to lawyers, to accountants, to any kind of work. In the past, we thought it would be only blue collar, and now it's going on to the direction of more white collar. So how do you see that future?
So anything that is around data, information, knowledge should really look into generative AI and how it can um, uh, change, but really improve their work. And really, there are two things. As I mentioned, it's also, if you look at the AI and a generative AI strategy for now, you can look at it for, let's call it cost leadership. You can now do many of the things, even filling forms or reading contracts or understanding many long text much faster and easier. So reduce your operating costs. The second one is differentiation. How can you use this technology to really differentiate yourself towards your customers, but of course also towards the competition, and now start really rapid innovation, really fast prototyping. And as you can see also in Microsoft in the last 7 or 8 months, really dozens and dozens of products that are being used by hundreds of millions. And um, this is part of this rapid pace and the change of the technology that it enables. to really transform many things and much faster.
Yeah. So another thing about, we're always mentioning that it's really fast during this talk. One of the things that I find really intriguing is that people resist change. They always resist it, and makes sense because they're afraid of the new thing. But usually they have time to adjust, right? So when the TV came, it was not like in all of the households in the US in one day. It took to 20, 30 years until it came to that, and then it took time. And now we have this AI which is so robust and it's so fast. It seems that if people would not adjust quickly or change quickly or maybe change their profession quickly, they would be out of work.
So let's take the TV as an example, and it's called also the long tail. So first it started with theaters. Okay, people went to actual theater to see shows, and then it went to the cinema. Okay, but the cinema was also at the beginning of the 20th century. People went to see the news in the cinema, and then it moved to our living room, the TV. We had a few decades, and then came the computer and the internet, and now it's on our smartphones. It's available everywhere. So but we still have everything. You can still go to the theater. You can still go to the cinema. You still have your TV. You have your computer. You have your smartphone. You have everything. And this is part of the long tail. Most people will use probably the smartphone for 80% of their activities, but you can watch TV, sometimes go to the cinema, occasionally go to the theater. So again, this is part of the things that, but how to adopt change, and there is a lovely quote that is attributed to Winston Churchill that says that people love change but want everything to stay the same. So again, and
They don't like changing. They like change, but not changing themselves.
This is part of the challenge, but this is why I recommend really start with the small habits, or start trying with small habits. Like even you have now something that you hate doing or you really don't like doing, use generative AI to help you accelerate it and outsource it to generative AI. Start building this capacity in you, just the basic literacy and the knowledge. Start with the things you don't like, that really the things that you don't want, you don't understand why you're doing it, use it. And then start developing many things, maybe for your hobbies, maybe if you never understood poetry and you want poetry, so put one of the lyrics that you love and start a discussion. Explain to me, interpret it to me, or open the discussion. And this is the second recommendation. Don't stop at the first prompt. Usually, as it's called also the alignment, that we want this AI to behave like us, but also to behave with the same morals or the same ethics. But usually, if you come to a person and ask him a question, the chances that, and you don't know this person, the chances that he will give you a full question, the full answer with everything, the specifics of his personal life, are zero. The same is almost for interacting with generative AI. Converse. Ask a question, ask it to deepen, ask to pivot, go back, ask to expand on something, and then you will see and really start to understand the value and the importance. Hold the conversation. Just even take 15, 20 minutes on a specific topic that you wanted. Let's take quantum mechanics. And as Richard Feynman said, I can safely say that no one understands quantum mechanics. He won 2 Nobel Prizes. So ask it to explain quantum mechanics for a 10-year-old, and go up then for 15-year-old, for 20-year-old, or for someone that is doing, I don't know, he's a guitar player or whatever. And then you'll see really almost, it was called Sparks of General Artificial Intelligence, a beautiful article that was released by MSR. But you will see that it can use metaphors and really explain it to your world and align it to your perspective and to your things that are of interest. And then you can start understanding the potential. But again, having it soon, we announced the Microsoft 365 Copilot. So it means in the near future, it's not going to be there, generative AI. It's not going to be in Bing or on ChatGPT. It's going to be inside Word. It's going to be inside Excel. It's going to be inside PowerPoint. It's going to be inside your Outlook. It's going to be side by side you, wherever you are.
Yeah. So if we're talking about Copilot and in general, the way that we see AI, we could say, okay, that's like a companion, like a guide, like a friend. I could consult, I could think, and it could be a professional. If I need a lawyer, if I need someone who would think with me about my work dilemmas, so forth, I could try and use it and maybe make friends with this technology and see how it's benefiting me. What's good for me to do that.
Yes, and behind the scenes, the model is called Instruct GPT. So the prompt, if you will give clear instructions, so articulate yourself well in English, it will accomplish the task. So, for example, you want to rent a house, you want to buy a house, or you got any legal contract and you're not a lawyer, or you don't understand legal jargon, or you're even afraid of legal jargon, you can now, of course, use the part of the document or the contract in the prompt and ask question, explain it to me in non-legal language, or what are the risks in this contract, what are the where does it speak about privacy, where does it speak about maybe changes in the future or whatever, and then just in your language ask the questions and you will get the answers from the document, and it can really assist and accelerate everything, because many of us are also pushing many tasks that maybe we're afraid of, scared of, that we don't know. So I'll postpone it. Now you
Yeah.
have your, as you mentioned, your legal co-pilot, your medical co-pilot. Again, it's a co-pilot. You need to understand the limitations, but again, it can really accelerate your
Yeah.
understanding and your approach to many, many things.
Yeah, and we mentioned that it could do things that I wouldn't want to do, which are dangerous. I don't like it. I'm afraid of it. And I had my last conversation was with a military expert, AI military, and it mentioned that all of the missions that don't want to risk the soldiers, they're thinking about how to solve it with AI, maybe with drones or something like that, instead of risking people. And now we're saying the same thing about what you don't want to do, like talking to service providers about their rates or whatever. You could use AI for that.
So historically, it was called the triple D, three Ds: dull, dangerous, and dirty. The three
Yeah,
types of tasks that we don't want people to do, or we don't want to do, and we have technology that can do it for us. So even we had elevator boys at the beginning of the 20th century. We had chimney cleaners, okay, Mary Poppins, but no
yeah,
one wants to do it today. Okay, so
yeah,
now we have technology to do it, and of course, and even dull. For example, you can see globally. You mentioned the Air Force, but it's globally. So the use of UAVs is so many tasks. Even we have the famous U-2 plane of the spy plane of the U.S. that flew for 70 or more hours, and it had a pilot there. Now you can use a drone. It's a dull job, and you can fly it remotely, and you don't need to waste the human spirit on these dull jobs. And of course, and this is part of the meaning and significance that we are looking for as humans in our work. And again, now you have this tool, all these repetitive tasks that you don't want to do, use generative AI and focus on your core meaning, on your core values, and of course on your growth in the company, or as a personal, on a personal familial
sure.
perspective.
Yeah. So before I go to OpenAI and Sam Altman, which is my next questions, I just want to share what people wrote. So Asher Idan wrote that in 1981 it was PC, personal computer, and 2023 is PAI, personal AI. This is how he sees that. Thanks, Asher, for your thought. And Ricardo Giacometti said that he needs to leave, but he thanks us for the really interesting talk. And Jonathan Vilner asks, what legal copilot can be used in Israel? Any suggestions or prompts? Like, could we use ChatGPT as a legal advisor in Israel?
So you can use it again, but part of the things that I recommend, it's not, it doesn't know all the laws or regulations of Israel. But if you have a specific question, again, and you want to explore, I recommend take the law, take the regulation, take the actual file, or take the contract, put it in the prompt, and ask questions. Ask for the interpretation, take even a verdict from a court, and ask around questions. And then it's called in-context learning. So you have just to give this information, you have three modes of in-context learning. That it means that when I interact, I open a new conversation, for example, with ChatGPT or also in Bing. This is the context. And I can now add information that it may not know. So, for example, Israeli law or any regulation, local regulation that it might not know. So, add it to the context, to the conversation, and then it will improve. It can take this knowledge and, of course, leverage its previous knowledge in the context for this conversation. So, this is the conversation. So you can. It's zero shot. It means ask anything without giving any prior examples. One shot, give one example. So, for example, one law, or give a few shots. So, upload 5 or 4 laws or regulations, and then ask the questions. So, this is also a possibility to really
Yeah.
evolve and learn and use it, leverage it for your needs.
Thank you for all the listeners or viewers who joined us. And I want to ask you about the visit from Sam Altman. He recently visited Israel, I think like 2 months ago. Am I mistaken? Like 2 or 3
Approximately,
months?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And it was like full house. Nobody could go and get a ticket, and some of them were canceled and all of that. So I have two questions about that. Could you tell us first about your impression from Sam Altman? Like he's the superstar of tech right now, I guess.
So we had, of course, also it was, I can tell you, it was months in the working to bring him to Israel. We had also an internal meeting and event internally, and he's really nice, down to earth, open for conversation. So this was a great pleasure that to see also the modesty in his approach and just as a human being to interact with him. So this was a great experience for me.
Yeah, I have to say something about the fact that he looks modest. I never talked to him, but the fact that he is so powerful and in the focus of so many people, and everybody's talking about OpenAI and him, I guess, and the fact that he's still humble is really surprising, especially for someone who is like, yeah, he went through all of that. He's been like in Y Combinator and as a manager, I think, and like he's done a few things, and he could be a very cocky guy, and he's not, which is surprising.
Surprisingly good, and this is amazing, and this is part of, I think, for growth for any leader that is in the growth process. Stay humble, stay modest, stay open, and of course authentic. And this is, I think, very good. And also, he came with Ilya Suchkover. He's a scientist
Yeah,
officer, or chief science officer. He's really
yeah.
a brilliant
And
guy.
he studied a bit in Israel, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, he grew for. He's an ex-Israeli, but he grew here for, I think, 8 or 10 years, and then he left to Canada, and then. But again, also an amazing and brilliant guy who is behind this technology.
Yeah, I know that he is like the brain behind everything, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So could you tell us, most of us did not go to this event, so could you tell us what are the interesting, insightful points that they raised during their, it was like an interview that people could ask questions, if I'm not mistaken?
So yes, we had it first also as like a fireside chat, and then also an interview, and opened it for questions by the employees. But again, it was an internal event. But I can say that one of the things that he was very happy to hear, that he didn't know also that the first 3 products came out of the Israeli center. So he was very happy also to hear this. So this was just an example. That something that surprised him on the other
Yeah,
side. So it was very nice.
yeah. And did he say anything about the risks and the way he sees the future?
So he's the CEO of an independent company. So you can read about his approach to risk, but he's as you mentioned, he's an outspoken guy on these issues.
Yeah. So, what are the challenges and opportunities associated with AI, and what should entrepreneurs or people who are in innovation should take into consideration while they're building these AI products?
So I'll take the word while or do. Okay, start doing, start exploring. Don't wait. And this is part, I think, also even if we're looking at the local Israeli entrepreneurs in innovation, we're very very fast and iterate. So leverage your strength uh, to start working. And I mean also not for the startups, but I mean also for sectors that were almost not impacted by this fourth industrial revolution. The more legacy sectors like industry, like manufacturing or farming or government or even the financial institutions and the insurance, now they have a way to start engaging with this fourth industrial revolution, with this digital transformation, and rapidly evolve or transform. And this is my main um, let's call it request or recommendation. Start working. Don't
Yeah.
wait. Don't postpone. You can really start experimenting and understand the value very very fast.
Yeah, I think that Bloomberg already has. You mentioned finance, and that's why I'm talking about Bloomberg. I think they already have their own AI. I don't know if they use any third party or they build it all themselves, but I think that they already have that, and it's a very
So
powerful thing for a
the
company.
Bloomberg GPT is an excellent story, but they started working also when GPT-3 was released. So June 2020, 3 years ago, they understood that something is happening or something is going to happen, and they started prototyping, creating, establishing a group, and created various versions of this Bloomberg GPT with their data. As I said, the fine tuning. So bring your data and augment these engines. So they started already in GPT-3.
Wow. And what would you say about, like, if we're talking about finance, all these like predictions about stocks and about, like, it was in the past, lots of analytical tools try to do that. Would you say that with AI capabilities, it will be much faster, stronger, more widely used?
Generative AI, I mean?
Yeah.
So yes, we see there are these famous graphs that within 5 days, 1 million users on ChatGPT. Within 2 months, 100 million, and the numbers kept growing. So yes, and so we see it everywhere, and this is part of the democratization. There is no barrier of age, of education, or profession. You don't need to be a software developer. You can also develop your own games with your kids now in the summer. Just go to the one of your favorite Gen AI, and you can use also Bing, of course. It's free, just inside your browser, free, no access, no nothing, and you can ask it to develop a snake game for you with the kids, and then just in English. What is the snake? What is its color? How does it eat? How fast? What are the changes? Just give the rules, articulate the rules, and start developing games. And you'll understand that there is no barrier now for STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math. Everything now is available through language. And this is part of this massive transformation or evolution of this technology that it really made it available to everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be really wonderful if everyone could utilize it and make advantage of it. And even people that are not really used to using technology or see themselves as, no, I'm not doing code, I'm not in tech, I'm not understanding that, they could use it. I'm part of a group of therapists, and they already talk about it and something which is so human and soft skills like therapy, and they could use AIs, which is like
So
wonderful.
people have gone to their favorite search engines to search for symptoms, for change, but now suddenly you can have your personalized approach, really into the point. When you go to the search engine and search for symptom, it's very general, but now you can also describe who you are, the age, the sector, the gender, whatever the background information, and it will give you a much more personalized and tailored answer to your need, and not that you will need to now understand the medical jargon and understand if it relates to you. You can now, again, bring, and don't be ashamed to write long prompts. It doesn't need to be one sentence or two sentences. You can see people that are writing 30 or 40 lines, or even 400 or 500 words of prompts. And don't be shy, and really start experimenting as you as, as you mentioned, and not only a professional. If you're a professional, as you mentioned, therapist, be sure that already your patients are using it for their own needs. So what is your role in making sure that they are using it safely and accurately? So also the interaction between the therapist and the patient
Yeah.
may change for the better, by the way, because, and also for the education, we can see a huge potential for the education, both the K to 12 and also for higher education. So it really is. I think we'll see a transformation in the coming years in many sectors.
Yeah. So I really hope that it will change education if we're talking about it, because it needs change all around the world. And the way that we teach is not really relevant for kids. I think worldwide, I don't know where they are using things which are personalized and creative and will enhance the curiosity of kids. And right now, it needs to change. So I hope it will work.
I think it's must. It doesn't. It's not in its requirement or it's an imperative. Most education systems, including this in Israel, was the entire education system. Okay, was developed or designed for the first industrial revolution, the 18th century. The three R's: the reading, writing, and arithmetics. The three skills. We even call it in Hebrew professions. With that they learn the mikzot. We know it's not. Only in the US, they did something that was called at the beginning of during the Cold War, the NDA, the National Defense Education Act, that they retransformed and updated to the second industrial revolution. But here, for example, in Israel, where it's relevant for the first, and
It's
you can
not
see that
relevant.
it's not relevant. And if we are not going to do anything, it's really irrelevant. We see globally, also in Israel, that families are letting go and releasing entirely the formal education system, and they're going to homeschooling. In Israel, the percentage doubled in the last 3 years, but we see the trend globally, that people understand that one of the members of the family need to stop his or her career, and really do the homeschooling with their kids if they want to provide a future, a prosperous future for them. And this is why I think we need also to have a huge transformation in the education system. If you saw at the beginning of the year of 2023, many schools or even universities stopped or blocked ChatGPT and the likes, because they said, what is the meaning? Every homework or piece of work that I'm giving my students or pupils, they can just go and use it, write it with ChatGPT. So they blocked it. Even someone developed a tool that is called ChatGPT Zero, and that you can, if you're a teacher or a professor, you can take the text that you receive from the student, paste it there, and it will give you the probability. What is the probability that it was written by an AI? And again, I call it also, so it was relevant, let's say, for one day, because just add to the prompt at the end or at the beginning, write it in such a way that AI will not be able to recognize that it was written by
Yeah.
AI, and that's it. But the main focus is the job of the teachers, all of the college professors, university professors, is not to be better detectives, is to teach better, to assess
Yeah.
better. And also we need to make sure that the kids or the students learn differently. And now they have this superpower, the super tool, super computer next to them, Gen AI, that knows everything. So this is part of the transformation that we need. The learning, the teaching, and the assessment needs to completely change.
Yeah, and trying to resist it will not work. They could try. There is the story about a teacher trying to one of his kids wrote something. I think it was in college, if I'm not mistaken. One of the students, and he deleted the work, and he said he could not like grade it or something. He did not get a grade, and then apparently the teacher was wrong in the sense, because they could not really understand the laws of what does it mean to use ChatGPT, because they didn't change in the way that they understand it. And in general, I think when we are thinking about our kids, I always think about what do they need, what are the talents or capacities or skills that they need for the future. And it seems that all of the things that we're not really thinking about communication, about working with people, understanding people, and all of these like soft skills would be much more important in the future than remembering and what we are doing right now is like
So
rehearsing the same like work and
I agree,
tests.
and the goal or the objective of the education system is to make sure that the kids are the citizens of the future and they are prepared for the present and future world. And they are now, if we go back, the education system is preparing them for the workforce of the first industrial revolution. We know today that even kids in the sixth grade, almost 65% of the vocations will not be there once they graduate. So, what is the relevance of it? And this is part, and it's I'll, I'll refer to Jack Welch. He's one of the CEOs of General Electric. He had one of his favorite quotes for me that if the rate of change outside is faster than the rate of change inside, the end is near. So you can see it, for example, in the education system. So, for example, take the kids; they are now maybe on vacation or just even during the year they in the weekend or in the evening as they are consumers or citizens, they are using ChatGPT, they are flying drones, they're using 3D printing, they heard about quantum computers, they have everything. They're of course using all the social media and smartphones, and they go into class and go back 200 years. And they also understand that it's completely irrelevant their experience inside to their lives outside. And this is something of that
Yeah.
must be closed.
Yeah. So we could talk about the education at least for one additional hour, but we're almost done with time. And I would just ask you the last questions. What's your number one tip for AI entrepreneurs today?
Um, Rapid prototyping, jump in. And today it's much easier to start also because also, as I mentioned, the cost leadership, it's much cheaper and easier to develop all the technologies because generative AI, even GitHub Copilot can write you the code much faster. So you can build the products much faster. So the iteration cycles are shorter and faster. And then you can also start working with customers faster and bring the value. And then go and find funding. But this is the major. Use the tools, leverage all these generative AI tools to develop and iterate faster. Don't just sell it outside, also work this way inside.
Yeah. So thank you, Tomer, for this discussion. It was really insightful and I had fun talking to you. So thanks.
Same, Adi. Thank you.
It's, it's been a pleasure. And to all of you change makers out there, thank you for joining us. And if you found this episode valuable and insightful, please share it. And I'll see you next week with another insightful talk. See ya.
Bye bye.